Hello and welcome to this WION Live Broadcast. I'm Nina Maria Potts. In the last week, we witnessed a raft of statements and debate over whether the fall of Kabul was inevitable. And now terror has taken over the Afghan capital and Kabul has fallen to the Taliban. The terror group's takeover in Afghanistan has left the world's leaders shocked and alarmed. The fate of millions in Afghanistan hangs by a thread. Before we begin the bulletin with all the details, we want to bring you these heartbreaking visuals from the Hamid Karzai airport in Kabul. What you see on your screen right now is a scene that the world will remember for years. These visuals reflect the utter desperation of Afghan civilians in their bid to escape the rule of terror. Thousands gathered on the tarmac of the airport as United States C-17 Globemaster, which is a large military aircraft, prepares to take off. Hundreds run behind the plane to get on. Some were hanging on the sides of the plane and some on the plane's tires. The second video from the Kabul airport is even more terrifying. It was taken a few moments after the plane took off, and from a distance, two people were seen falling off the plane after it had taken off. There are reports people fell onto the rooftops. The Kabul airport meltdown and this desperate dash to escape by Afghan civilians has shocked the international community. We'll get you more details. First, the headlines. At least 5 people killed inside Kabul airport amid the rush to leave the capital of Afghanistan. This as US troops fire shots into the air at Kabul airport to disperse the crowds at the tarmac. All commercial flights from Kabul airport have been suspended amid scenes of panic and chaos as thousands try to flee the country. The United States and allies are urging the Taliban to let Afghans leave. Amid growing criticism of the Biden administration, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has blamed US domestic politics for the Western troop withdrawal. She terms it the biggest NATO debacle since its founding. China becomes the first country to recognize the Taliban. Beijing says it respects the right of the Afghan people to independently determine their own destiny and is willing to continue to develop friendly relations with Afghanistan. Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani is reported to be in Oman right now and will be leaving for the United States. According to reports, Tajikistan did not allow Ghani's plane to land in Dushanbe as reported earlier.
The way that you see behind me is of the Afghan presidential palace. This is now being guarded by the Afghan Taliban.
WION's correspondent Anas Malik reports from outside the Afghan presidential palace where Taliban fighters lined up brandishing their weapons. After days of escalation and fighting, the Taliban has finally taken over Afghanistan. They've taken over the presidential palace as well. And an official transfer of power could happen any time in Kabul. The world right now has its eyes set on the fast-paced political developments in Afghanistan. Here in the United States, in just a few minutes from now, the United Nations Security Council will be holding an emergency meeting to discuss the situation in Afghanistan. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres will open the briefing, which will then be followed by closed consultations. The meeting has been requested by Estonia and Norway, the two non-permanent members of the Security Council. Russia has also said that the situation in Afghanistan requires the immediate intervention of the Security Council. In a statement, the United Nations chief urged the Taliban to follow utmost restraint, this in order to protect rights and to ensure that the humanitarian needs can be addressed. Antonio Guterres, who's repeatedly urged for a peaceful settlement in Afghanistan, has said that he is particularly concerned about the future of women and girls whose hard-won rights must be protected. Gulumi Satsai, Afghanistan's UN ambassador, has said that a message has been sent to the Council to do everything to prevent further violence and to ensure an orderly transition to a transitional government. T.S. Tirumurti, ambassador of India to the United Nations, has said that the Indian presidency will convene briefings and consultations on Afghanistan today. Let's cross now to Susan Tehrani, who's joining us live from New York. Susan, what can we expect to come out of this UN emergency meeting?
Well, as you mentioned, this was a meeting that was called by Estonia and Norway yesterday, both pen holders on Afghanistan, while India was prepared to really have this meeting as soon as Sunday, which was yesterday. Just a few minutes from now, member states are going to go into the chamber and discuss the latest situation in Afghanistan. And one of the challenges, first of all, is going to be how member states are going to regard the Taliban, considering the fact that they were very adamant just a few days ago when they met that they are not going to recognize any regime that comes to Afghanistan by the use of force. They were obviously referring to the Taliban. Now, one can argue that, that wasn't the case, but that's going to be one of the challenges. That dire humanitarian situation in Afghanistan will definitely be on the agenda, considering the fact that the United Nations, right now employs roughly 3,000 employees who are Afghan and about 720 international staff members inside the country. And although the UN officials have repeatedly said that their mission is going to continue, the situation is really rapidly changing on an hourly basis, and we'll have to see what comes out of this meeting.
Susan, given the failure of the international community to protect the Afghan people in Afghanistan, what teeth does the UN really have in ensuring peace in Afghanistan?
Well, I think as far as the United Nations go, member states have time and again said that at the end of the day, Afghanistan's security depends on the Afghan people themselves, and Afghanistan is a sovereign country. So what they can do is come up with mandates on what Afghanistan needs on its own. But I think that a peaceful Afghanistan will ultimately, according to the Security Council, depends on an Afghan-led peaceful solution led by Afghans themselves. But this meeting, from what it seems right now, will really focus, first of all, on trying to bring the ever elusive peace to the situation in Afghanistan right now, but also the humanitarian concerns that are very prevalent in the country. The UN Assistant Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, right now is operating in Afghanistan. It has to renew its mandate for September. That's very important. And with a dire humanitarian crisis in the country right now, it's expected that member states are going to really focus on that here at the Security Council, and then the other political issues are going to be secondary.
And that was a live report from the United Nations. Afghanistan president is right now expected to be leaving from Oman to the United States. According to reports, Tajikistan did not allow Ghani's plane to land in Dushanbe as reported earlier. As the Taliban take over Afghanistan, China says it's seeking friendly relations with the group. Beijing has fought to maintain unofficial ties with the Taliban throughout the entire withdrawal process, and now it's looking like China wants to take the relationship further. This means that China is now the first country to recognize the Taliban.
The Afghan Taliban have repeatedly expressed their hope to develop good relations with China, that they look forward to China's participation in the reconstruction and development of Afghanistan. And we will never allow any forces to use Afghan territory to endanger China. We welcome this.
China shares a 76-kilometre-long border with Afghanistan. Beijing has long feared that Afghanistan could become a staging point for the Uyghurs. But a top-level Taliban delegation promised that Afghanistan would not be used as a base for protests. In exchange, China has offered economic support and investment for Afghanistan's reconstruction. Beijing has called upon the Taliban to ensure a smooth transition of power, asking them to keep its promises for an open and inclusive Islamic government. The Chinese embassy in Kabul also remains operational. Even though embassy officials were evacuated months ago, the Taliban's takeover opens a strategic door for China. For Beijing, a stable and cooperative administration in Kabul would pave the way for an expansion of its Belt and Road Initiative in the country. For the Taliban, on the other hand, China could become a major source of investment. Iran, too, has thrown its weight behind the Taliban, with President Raisi saying that the defeat of the United States in Afghanistan must usher in durable peace in the country. In a statement, Raisi said, and I quote, "The military defeat and the US withdrawal from Afghanistan should offer an opportunity to restore life, security and lasting peace in that country." And I end the quote. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif also met and held talks with Chinese Special Envoy for Afghanistan Affairs Yue Xiaoyong in Tehran, as the two countries discussed bilateral ties and the latest developments in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Russia is set to meet the Taliban in Kabul on Tuesday. Moscow has said that it will decide on recognizing the new government based on its conduct. In a statement by Russian Foreign Ministry official, Moscow says that its ambassador is in contact with the Taliban leadership and will meet with the Taliban security coordinator tomorrow. Got it. Several eyewitness videos have captured chaotic scenes at Kabul International Airport as thousands of Afghans tried to flee after the Taliban captured the capital city. Helpless Afghan families, including many who were carrying children, surged onto the tarmac trying to board a flight. There were also reports that the US troops fired into the air to disperse the crowds. At least 5 people have been killed in the chaos at Kabul Airport. The US, UK, Germany and Canada are among the countries trying to evacuate all their nationals from the country.
Utter chaos, fear and panic. These visuals of thousands of desperate Afghan nationals are not from the streets of Kabul, but the tarmac of the Hamid Karzai International Airport. With their lives hanging by the thread, this could be the last chance for many Afghan nationals to escape the rule of terror. As Taliban swept Kabul and took over the presidential palace. Thousands, including parents carrying children, barged into the Kabul airport to board flights to flee Afghanistan's beleaguered capital. Some even hanged on to the passenger air bridge. Amidst the pandemonium, US troops at the Kabul airport fired shots in the air, further triggering panic. All commercial flight operations from the Kabul International Airport have been shut. Eyewitness video showed people shouting inside an Istanbul-bound flight that reportedly could not take off. The US Embassy has warned Americans in Afghanistan to shelter in safe places and to not get to the airport. The US has sent 6,000 troops to the airport to fly out embassy personnel as well as Afghan interpreters. US Secretary of State has played down America's hasty exit.
We're working to make sure that our personnel are safe and secure. We're relocating the men and women of our embassy to a location at the airport. It's why the President sent in a number of forces to make sure that as we continue to draw down our diplomatic presence, we do it in a safe and orderly fashion.
UK troops also arrived in Kabul to aid British nationals and diplomats still in the country. Germany has also shuttered its embassy in Kabul and is preparing to send military transport planes to evacuate as many Germans and local Afghan helpers as possible. Over 60 nations have urged the Taliban to allow departure of those who want to leave, including Afghan and international citizens. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Afghanistan is under siege by Islam hardliners. Without the support of the US military, the government has collapsed. The president has fled the country, leaving millions to bear the crisis. And now Kabul streets are patrolled by Taliban fighters. WION correspondent Anas Malik has been reporting from the middle of the debacle. Take a look at this latest report from the streets of Kabul after the Taliban takeover.
Day 1 under the Taliban rule. How is Kabul reacting? We decided to take a drive around the city. Let's have a look. Life has not yet returned to normalcy. There is fear on the roads that is being clearly witnessed with these closed shops, as my camera person can show you as well. Majority markets in the city currently stand closed. This is a military vehicle. This used to be under the control of the Afghan military. Now it bears a white flag, driven by one of the Taliban leaders.
How will you ensure the normalcy of life?
In Afghanistan, inshallah, everything will be okay. But the people can continue their lives normally. Inshallah, we will implement the security situation as normal. Everything will be okay.
As the Afghan Taliban overrun the capital city of Kabul, they're now practically in charge of the city. We've seen them holding checkpoints, checking people, checking cars, and they would want to give the semblance of normalcy. I'm standing in Shahre-No, which is the city center. Usually, this used to be a buzzing market, but what I'm seeing is the fact that markets are now closed. Out of the fear, people are not used to such a setup or such a system as yet. The Kabul airport currently has been closed due to the mass exodus that was being done by the people of Afghanistan as they tried to leave due to the fear of the Taliban. Anas Malik in Kabul, Afghanistan, for WION, World is One.
And with that, it's a wrap on today's WION live broadcast from Washington, D.C. For all the latest news on the Afghanistan crisis, stay tuned to WION.